addictions are like that. They affect some people more than they affect others.
Well,
but there is a percentage of people affected by hardcore pornography in a very violent way, and you're obviously one of them.
That was a major component, and I don't know why I was vulnerable to it. All I know is that it had an impact on me that was just so central to the development of the violent behavior that I engaged in.
Ted, after you committed your first murder, what was the emotional effect on you? What happened in the days after that?
Well, again, please understand that even all these years later, it's very difficult to talk about it, and reliving it through talking about it is difficult, to say the least, but I want you to understand what happened. It was like coming out of some kind of horrible trance or dream. I can only liken it to after, you know, I don't want to over-dramatize it, but to have been possessed by something so awful and so alien, and then the next morning wake up from it, remember what happened, and realize that basically, I mean, in the eyes of the law, certainly in the eyes of God, you're responsible. To wake up in the morning and realize what I had done, and with a clear mind and all my essential moral and ethical feelings intact at that moment, absolutely horrified that I was capable of doing something like that.
You really hadn't known that before?
There is just absolutely no way to describe, first, the brutal urge to do that kind of thing, and then what happens is once it has been more or less satisfied and recedes, you might say, or spent, that sense, that kind of energy, the level recedes, and basically I became myself again. And I want people to understand this too, and I'm not saying this gratuitously because it's important that people understand this, that basically I was a normal person.
Basically, I was a normal person. Wow. Dr. Dobson, you have spent quite a bit of time writing and studying about family relationships and healthy families and unhealthy families, and we heard Ted Bundy say in the first segment that his family life, from his point of view, was healthy. His mother said the same thing, and yet there have been these reports that his grandfather had some emotional difficulties with toward animals and all kinds of things. Do you believe that it was pornography and alcohol? Could there be another component here?
I have no doubt that there is another component. I agree that it's much more complex than that. Why was he vulnerable to hardcore pornography? Why did it do this to him? He must have had some massive feelings of inferiority and self-doubt that made him want to possess a woman and to do these violent things. That must have come from somewhere. I'm not well-versed on his early family life. I have had almost no exposure to that information. I've read about him. I saw the interviews today that other people saw with his mother. She said she couldn't explain it. And of course, families do want to protect themselves. But I'm sure there was more to it than that. But I do believe him when he says this was a predominant influence in his life. He got addicted to it early. He said 12 or 13 years of age, he fell onto this stuff. He found it on a road, and it captured him. It got a hold of him. And I think that can happen. At that age, you're very, very vulnerable, and the object of sexual interest can be changed fairly easily early on in adolescence. You know, you can, what a normal child would do at that age, a boy will say, would be to look at a cheerleader type image as the object of sexual attraction. Mm-hmm. You can change that to a detective story type thing where a woman is bound with her hands behind her back and a knife at her neck. You can change that very easily. I believe that did happen to him.
Dr. Miller, in your interviews with other people who were, I guess, in trouble with the court, Looking at Ted Bundy, how can he disguise something like this when being interviewed by psychologists like yourself?
Yes, I'm a psychiatrist.
Okay, psychiatrist.
Probably the most informative book, a definitive book ever written, was by Harvey Cleckley, and it was called The Mask of Sanity, and it dealt with the clinical entity of the psychopathic personality, the sexual psychopath being included among this. And indeed, it is a mask of sanity, because the thoughts and behaviors of persons who have psychopathic behavior are so deviant and so different and so diverse and at odds with what we normally would do, that it's hard for us to even identify with any of their basic behaviors. However, they do have the irrational appearance. They have, of course, a glibness, which is fully manifest in here. And I think the most predominant feature of this man is his ability to express himself. He would have made a good lawyer, I'm sure. He has also the ability to rationalize and make reasonable and warranted his behaviors. And I think we must not be taken in and seduced by his glibness and his intelligence in the manner of believing that he has a sum total explanation for his wrongdoing. I think he has seized upon this in a, as I say, reductionistic and simplistic way. And I'm not trying to diminish the influence of pornography as a negative aspect and an influence in our society, because I believe it probably is. But I think that experience compels me to conclude that there's much more to this in terms of experiential factors which have molded and warped this man's personality and made him conscienceless, that is, conscienceless from the standpoint of not having a preventative or prophylactic functioning conscience,
Right.
which is the most fundamental thing.
At this point in our conversation, I would like to bring in former Assistant Attorney General Ray Markey. And Mr. Markey, you're in Tallahassee. You've been listening to this, Mr. Bundy's interview with us. You've had quite a bit of experience over the years in representing the state of Florida in the legal battles against Mr. Bundy as he fought execution. What's your reaction, Mr. Markey, to what you're hearing tonight?
Well, I find it a little bit offensive, and I don't mean to be antagonistic, but I couldn't help but feel that this is a blatant attempt for him to gain sympathy for himself, for the enormity of his crime that he has committed. To blame it on alcohol and pornography is the flip side of him saying that, he takes full responsibility. I don't accept it. And the one thing that concerned me was Dr. Dobson's form of questioning, as though he were wanting Bundy to tell him that pornography caused this. I agree much more with Dr. Miller. And I would just like to say one other thing. Even if pornography caused this, I don't think we should obscure the fact that Mr. Bundy could not be excused for the acts he committed, and he deserved the punishment that he received.
Thank you, Mr. Markey. Dr. Dobson?
I strongly agree with that, and I hope that I haven't led people to believe otherwise. I did not oppose his execution. I believe he deserved it. I never said to Ted that he did not deserve to die. I think I was pretty open with him about that. If there ever was a case where an individual deserved to face the maximum penalty, I think he did. As you'll see in the segment coming up, I actually asked him if he deserved to die, and I think he almost said yes. So I'm not an apologist for Ted Bundy, and I'm not here to try to say that the poor man should not be held responsible.